Honda Civic 2006 to 2011. The SRS light, the airbag light. I couldn't find a video on the net for this, so I thought I'd do one. If you get fault code 41, which is the pre-tensioner, I'll tell you about the pre-tensioner, I'll show you in fact. It's not quite as simple as you think. The obvious thing is checking all your connections under here, but if it says pre-tensioner, then it's going to be pre-tensioner. It'll either be reading the wrong ohms, or it will be an open circuit, in which case it will fail. The light will come on the dash, and it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to extinguish that. First thing to do, open your back door and your front door. This is a pre-tensioner fault on the passenger side. You need to remove, well, not remove it, but pull it back, this trim, because that will enable you to get this whole section off. You'll also need to lift up the ends of these. They only clip on. Everything clips together, all right? There are two parts to this seatbelt. It's what's called a two-stage. So the first bit is this bit. This sits here, and this whole assembly here is sitting under this carpet. If you needed to get it out, again, you'll have to unclip it, pull the carpet back, and there's one bolt through the side that holds it on. Okay. But there is two parts to the pre-tensioner. There's that bit, but there's also one in the seat belt itself. I'm telling you this because I've just replaced this part, and I've still got the fault code coming up. So I'm 98% certain that the fault is actually in the seat belt, because that's got a sensor in it as well. So like I say, you need to remove this, pull it back, same on the front, to enable you to remove this long piece of plastic, all on clips. Same at the top, you'll have to remove that if you want to get this section off, and you'll need to pull that away because if you're going to replace the seat belt, you've got to thread it all through. There we go, that's that section. So you'll need to unbolt the belt from the bottom, and also this fitting up here, and then you'll need to thread it back through there. So let's get the seat belt off first, and we'll go from there. There's two bolts that hold the seat belt on. There's one here and there's one right down here, but the one to get to that one there, you're going to have to lift up more of this trim to pull this carpet, and there's a piece of plastic underneath. You need to bend that back that way so you can get to the bottom bolt. See it down there? That one. And obviously this nut up here. This is if you want to remove the seat belt. If you look at the seat belt, it's got this connector here, and there's a good chance that that's where the fault is in the pre-tensioner. In my case, the airbags didn't even go off, and I cannot recall having an accident in it. I have had to brake hard though, and that may be enough to have upset this seat belt. But I say the airbags didn't deploy, so presumably it wasn't hard enough impact. But anyway, I've got this 41 code, so I'll swap this seat belt out, and I'll show you how to put all this lot back, and then you've got a rough idea of what you're doing. This is it with the trim pulled back. You don't actually have to remove it, but fold it down. I suppose you could remove this plastic piece if you wanted to, but I found I got it okay. So you need to undo that bolt, which secures this assembly, because otherwise you won't get into the bottom bolt on the seat belt. Top one's easy enough because that's 10mm. And this one is 14mm. In fact, most of this stuff is 14mm, including the bolts for the seats, because you're going to need to undo the seat, so you can just push it forward enough to give you the room that you need. So I'll get this pre-tensioner unit off, and then we can get to that bottom bolt holding the seat belt on. That's the seat belt unbolted, but you'll need to remove this connector, and you do that by using a very small screwdriver. And see this yellow connector here? You you just prise up that piece of plastic. I shall do that off camera, and then you can unplug that. You see I've lifted that up. You've also got this connector, but this is on a little slide, and you pull that out of the way, and that's your seatbelt free then. So, right, we'll get the other one. I've noticed actually in a lot of places say don't fit a second-hand seatbelt. Well, I can kind of see the merit in that, particularly for those that like you to send them in to have them reset, etc. Or they might suggest you go to a Honda dealer. Well, it's alright if you've got plenty of money, but for the majority of us, particularly in these less than affluent times, we have to manage the best we can. Anyway, I've got a good used second-hand seatbelt, and I'm going to swap this assembly over. This isn't a complete how-to, but what I would say is, if you get a pre-tensioner fault, don't just assume it's that. It could be that, or it could be the seatbelt. In most cases, you're better off buying the complete unit. I think I paid about £19 for it, which was pretty reasonable. I'll just show you the sequence of washers here behind here. Make sure you get those right, and this guide pin that just fits in there, it's just a plate, that's all. And then, because I had to remove this, I've put that plug back in. I've slid that one onto a slider there. I'm just going to reconnect that one, and then I'm going to finish tightening this up, and then I'll show you how we put all the trim back. Just have a good check round afterwards and make sure all the plugs are fully home. Loose connection here, you'll be back where you started. Now the next thing to do is get this off. This is the type of bit you need to remove these two screws. With the screws out, you lift up the bottom, wiggle it out from the top. Now, let's take this out of the way as well. Best way to do it is slide it up the belt. It's tight, but eventually it will go up. Right, this is how you undo it. You see this metal clip on the side? It's held on two little tangs, one there, both sides. You need to remove that, so we'll get that off. Right, we're looking at the back now. See this spring, that thing there. What's holding the belt on is this bar that runs across underneath the spring. So what you've got to do is get a small flat bladed screwdriver and lever that back, not the spring so much, the bar behind it will bring the spring with it, and then the belt will come out. And if you bought a second belt complete, you're going to have to do that job twice, because you're going to have to remove this and push it through, so you've got this free, and now we can thread the belt through. So I'll do that next, and I'll put this panel back up. What you may need to do to get this to line up with that, because remember these seat belts have an adjustment for height, so if that's the case, you just squeeze this piece of plastic and it'll stop wherever you want it to stop. Just thought I'd mention that in case you're struggling with it. Also, when you come to put the belt back in and put the clip back on it again, make sure, you see this, it's got a flange on it, make sure that flange sits inside the plastic casing, i.e. this side of it. Do you see what I mean? You don't want it on the outside. And that's that clip pushed fully home. Make sure that's home before you start screwing this together. That's it, that's the top piece up. Belt was now joined onto that, so really it's a case of folding all this back. Again, you'll need to lift that to push it back in place. There is a little white plastic clip, can you see that? To get that up. When you pull this carpet back, you need to lift that pin out, but I actually found it just lifted out, in all honesty. So I'm just going to push all that back, and then we'll put this cover on, and then we'll put the trim back on, and we'll see if that 4-1 error, the SRS light, has gone. Seatbelt all refitted. Good chance that the SRS ECU will need resetting, but we'll see. that's going to stay on. Okay, right, well what we'll do is we'll short the MES plug, which I conveniently left hanging underneath. If you don't know what the MES plug is, refer to my other video beneath. Right, well in this case shorting the MES plug hasn't worked, so there are two options available to me. One is I can take the whole SRS module out, which is somewhere under the central tunnel, or I can take it to a local garage that is able to reset SRS codes. If they've got a decent scanner, they should be able to do that. Otherwise you've got to send it away, and I don't know, perhaps take a week there and back, and that'd be about 40 quid to have it reset. This is the trouble, isn't it, really, with electronic cars and all their fault modes. Good in lots of ways for safety and all the rest of it, you can't knock it, but at times like this it can be a real pain. Anyway, that's how you change the seat belt and the pre-tensioner, or how you get to it. I've got everything back nice and neat now. Seat belt's all working as it should, all the connectors are in. There's no reason why I should be having a code at all, other than the fact that it's now hard coded into the SRS, but that's okay, we'll deal with it.